Hi, I'm Sheila Layton. Welcome to the Beyond Coincidence Show, where every moment holds a miracle and we talk about seeing the hand of God in our lives. Call it a God wink or a tender mercy or whatever you want. Everyone on this show has seen the hand of God or their higher power in their lives in a very real and personal way. Hey everybody, welcome to the Beyond Coincidence Show. I have a really special guest. His name is Todd Moody, and he actually knows my sister. And they figured out that we are distantly related. Todd, did you guys figure out how far back great-grandpas were brothers, or how'd that go?
I believe we share the second great grandfather. Uh, a second great grandfather. Not
Oh,
sure what that makes us, but we're not too distantly
no.
related. We're pretty closely related.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And it was funny because I don't know, for whatever reason, yesterday I was thinking about my grandpa, who didn't grow up in any religion. And so I went back to like great great grandfather to find out when they joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And our great great grandfather had joined the church at 21, came from Denmark and joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when he was 21. They had 11 children. And of those 11 children, only the oldest one was baptized in the church. None of the other kids did. Some of them joined later in life, but none of them did. And then my grandpa came from a family of 11 children. And only half of them, none of them were baptized at 8 years old. And 5 of the 6 of them baptized in later life, and none of them in this life. So anyway, it was just really interesting. I went back, and these are huge families. And so we're
Well,
related.
your great great grandfather that came from Denmark is my great great grandfather.
Okay,
So
so we share a great great grandfather,
my mother's maiden name is the surname of our great great grandfather. So yeah,
which would be Lund.
correct.
Yeah. So that is my maiden name.
Got it.
Yeah. Kathy and I grew up, and our maiden name is Lund. So
Well,
anyway,
hello, cousin.
yeah, hello. So this is really fun. So just a little quick bit about Todd. He is a lawyer in Las Vegas, Nevada, where he and his wife, Dee, raised 4 beautiful children, and they now have 6 grandchildren and 2 more on the way. He enjoys hiking, cycling, and working on family history. So you're still a busy guy, Todd. That's
Yeah,
that's
I keep
good.
busy.
So tell me, what does life look like today for Todd and Dee? You don't have any kids at home anymore, do you?
We are empty nesters and we are very busy traveling to see kids and grandkids and traveling with them sometimes. Helping this last weekend, we were in Arizona, uh, helping our kids move into a new home. So
Oh
life's
yeah.
good. We have a lot of fun.
It is really kind of beautiful, right? When the kids are grown, and but yet they're close enough you can see them, but yet you don't have to get up in the night if you don't want
That's
to.
right.
And it's kind of beautiful. So I'm assuming you still work full time in a law practice.
I do work full time.
So you're still a busy guy working, and then your weekends are for playing.
That's it.
That's awesome. Okay, Todd, let me let's go back to when you were growing up. Tell me a little bit about Todd growing up, what your family life was like, how many kids, where did you fit in, where did religion play a part, if any? Let's get going on that.
Yeah. So thanks for asking. By the way, I love your podcast. I love the title. I love the content, and it's a real honor to be asked to share my story. I think I've listened to 3 or 4 of your podcasts already, and I just hope my story is as interesting as those that I've listened to. But
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's really kind of you.
we've lived in Las Vegas for 30 years. I grew up in Utah. I was I kind of had a sandlot experience as a child. Um, my brother and I just have one full sibling. I do have a half sister who lives in California that I'm really close to. But my childhood was fun and adventurous. Um, there was some conflict at home. My mother was married 4 times, so I saw men come in and out of the house and in my life, and that presented some challenges. But I had some grandparents that lived close by, and I spent a lot of time with them. And the stability in my life came from them, from my activity in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and scouting.
So, um, were you baptized at 8 years old into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints, or did that come later?
I was baptized, and I was baptized by an uncle who I remain close to this day. He's actually a
Woo!
cousin. I've always called him my uncle, but he's a cousin, and he means a lot to me. So,
Oh, that's awesome. And so, was it your grandparents that mostly took you to church?
um, but whenever I was with them, yes, I went to church with my grandparents, but otherwise, usually, at home.
At home, you did attend church with your parents then?
For the most part.
Yeah.
They're,
And
not.
so, in okay, so and then as you got older through your like youth and teen years, did you attend youth activities? Was that something that your parents said, "Hey, let's do this," or was it just something that you did on your own?
It's something I did on my own.
So you
Um,
had a lot of LDS friends, I'm assuming.
Lots of LDS friends. When I was 15, I moved to Wyoming and, attended seminary and church
So
there. And
what took you to Wyoming?
my mother married a coal miner.
Oh, so you and your brother then moved to Wyoming,
We
and you
did.
stayed active in the church there.
Yes.
Oh, and so did you graduate there from high
I,
school?
gr- I graduated from high school in Wyoming and went to college for a year. And that's when life kind of took an unexpected turn. My mom passed away when I was 18.
Oh,
She passed away suddenly, and I had
that's
a lot
fun.
of decisions to make in life. And I grew up quickly and asked Heavenly Father what direction He had for me, and I received some answers and decided to serve a full-time mission for the church, and I did so in England.
Now, Todd, was that something that you always thought you would do, or was it because of this specific situation and the answer you got from the Lord that you decided to serve?
Yeah, it's something I thought I would always do, but as soon as my mom passed, I knew that it was time to get serious about whatever it was going to be. Am I uh, going to finish college in the next 3 years, or am I going to serve a mission first? And I prayed fervently to know what to do, and it wasn't an immediate answer, but when the answer came, it was very clear.
Tell me, one of the reasons for the podcast that I want to pull out from people is a couple of things. One is, how did you develop your relationship with God or your higher power? And the other one is, when you receive answers to prayer, what does that feel like for you? Like in this particular incident, what did that feel like to you? Was it a voice? Was it a feeling? Because I know that, we know that the Lord can speak to us in so many different ways. But how did that work for you, especially on the mission thing?
Um, so I was not praying about whether I should serve a mission. I was praying to know where to find truth and if the things that uh, I was studying were true. And the answer came to me in a way that I had not experienced before. It was just a warmth that began at the top of my head that filled my body all the way down to my feet. It was such a remarkable experience and so different than anything I'd ever experienced before. Um, I the only thing I could do was get back on my knees and express gratitude for it, and the feeling magnified.
So, like you say, you weren't praying specifically about a mission. You were basically saying, Heavenly Father, is all the stuff I've been taught my whole life true?
Yeah,
Was that
that's
was that sort of
exactly
the question that you were asking? And so then when you felt that, it was okay, now I can't deny this experience. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving me this experience.
yeah. It was to know the truthfulness of the things that I had been reading in Scripture, and when that answer came, all of these different parts of my life just seemed laid out in a path ahead of me.
And you knew then that, okay, my next step is a mission. Now, were you at that time, did you like create mission? You knew the path, or was it just, okay, this is your first step? Go on the mission. I'll help you with your next step later. Or did you kind of know the next few steps?
Yeah, it's a good question. I just knew that that was my next step, and that everything else would work out after that, and it
And
has.
doesn't feel like typically that's kind of how God works in our lives generally. He doesn't generally give us the whole plan laid out. It's just like, okay, here's your next step. Trust me and do it.
Right.
And so you
I
said you served your mission in England?
I did.
And how was that?
It was incredible. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the most fulfilling and rewarding thing I've ever done.
And you learned I can do hard things.
I did. I knew I could do hard things before I got there, but it was reinforced as a missionary.
Yeah. How long after your mom passed did you leave on your mission?
6 months.
Oh, only 6 months.
Yeah,
So that was probably hard, but also really good distraction to get you out of your grief.
I think so. It definitely made me turn to God in a way I had not done before.
I can relate. Yes, you do. You at that point, right? You have to go. Do I believe in life after death? Do I believe there's a God? Because Kathy and I lost our mom and dad and sister when we were. I had just turned 21, and she was actually still only 19. She didn't turn 20 for a few months, and that's kind of was my experience too. Is I had to sort of dig deep and go, do I believe all this or don't I? Do I believe there's life after death, or do I just think they're gone? And so you kind of do have to dig deep.
You do?
But yeah, so you went on your mission. It was a great experience. You came home. What happened when you came home? Because now you don't have mom.
Yeah.
And was your dad alive still and in the picture at that time?
He was
Your biological
alive, but they had been divorced when I was 6 or 7. But I became significantly closer to my father while I was serving a mission.
dad? Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. So you got home from your mission, and then what'd you do?
Um, I resumed dating my high school sweetheart and baptized her 3 weeks after I returned home. She was attending Brigham Young University, uh, and a year and a half after that, we got married.
So 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 Dee was your high school sweetheart.
She was.
Well, that's crazy and cute. So she was going to BYU not as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That's right.
Oh, wow. Okay. So did she grow up? Where did she grow up? Did she grow up in Utah?
She grew up in Georgia
Oh, wow. So,
and moved to
how,
Wyoming when she was about 10 years old.
oh, okay. And that's where you met her when you moved to Wyoming. What took her to BYU?
Um, Me.
She followed you there.
Yeah,
Well, so she waited for you when you were on your mission then.
she did.
Oh, that's so cute. All right. I'll quit embarrassing you about that.
Oh, it's not embarrassing at all. I love it.
That, that's so great. So great. So great. All right, Todd. You have an experience that you have been thinking about that you would like to share where you saw the hand of God in your life. I will let you just get into that and give as much detail and background as you want so that people can see where you saw God working in that and why you know that it was his hand in that experience.
So I've told you that, my mother's passing was a pivotal moment in my life, not just because it was difficult and made me do some soul searching, but because I had an experience at the time of her death that helped me realize in a way I didn't understand before that our spirits are immortal, that life continues past death. And probably because of my maternal grandmother's love for genealogy, I just picked it up kind of where she left off, at a time when I had boxes of records and books of remembrance and photographs. We now have, personal computers that we can put all that information on a disk and then eventually online. So all my life, I've loved genealogy. Um, it was about 8 years ago. Um, I just started working on the biography of my third great grandfather, whose name is Hans Hartwig Wilhelmsen.
Whew, it's a
And
mouthful.
he's from, he was from Norway. And I read everything I could get my hands on. I looked at every source that I could find on Ancestry, on Family Search, and I added to a very short autobiography that he left. And it was substantive. It was good. It contained a lot of facts about dates and places, but it was missing something, and I really didn't know what. But I just felt compelled to continue looking. If you ever hit a wall in genealogy, you stop looking vertically and you start looking horizontally. You start exploring siblings
Mhm.
and spouses. And so, probably after 3 or 4 months of finding everything I could about my third great grandfather, I started looking at my second great grandmother, his fifth child, and then her siblings and their spouses. And I learned that Hans' oldest child, oldest daughter, married a fairly famous guy from Salt Lake. And I figured out that the manuscripts collection at the University of Utah had some of his personal effects that he'd left.
Oh wow,
So
that's cool.
I made an appointment. I went to the Special Collections Library. It's one of those rooms you go in, they make you put on white gloves. You have to leave phones. You can't take any writing utensils. They hand you a pencil and a little piece of paper if you want to take notes while you're in there. And then they delivered, it was either 2 or 3 boxes onto a big table
And is
that
that
I,
all to protect the documents? Is that what
yes,
that? Yeah, they don't want you taking pictures. They don't want you touching anything.
exactly.
Okay, because
And
those are
if you
priceless.
want pictures, you can ask them and make arrangements sometimes if they're not copyright protected. But so I start going through his documents, and I'd probably been in there for only 20 or 30 minutes, and I find a little manila folder. And um, the manila folder has the name of the granddaughter. Her name was Netta. She was not a sibling of my second great grandparent, but she was the grandchild of this third great grandfather, whom whose life I was
As your
researching.
third great grandfather, this was his grandchild.
Correct, correct.
Okay,
So um, I opened this up and start reading, and I about fell off my chair because, and I'm going to read this to you. This is what she wrote about this third great grandfather of mine
so it was her
and
grandfather. This is what
her
she wrote about
grandfather.
her grandfather, but your
Yeah,
third great grandfather.
that
Okay,
that's that's exactly right. So she wrote, "My Norwegian grandfather, short and stocky, with white hair and beard and piercing blue eyes. He had, like most Norwegians, been a sailor all his life, the latter part as the master of a sailing vessel. His skin was brown as a walnut, and his deep-set eyes had a habit of peering out from half-closed lids. He told me tales of the sea, of cargoes of ambergris and furs brought from the Nova Templa, loaded by Muscovites, as he called the Russians, of wines and silks from France, of great caches of olives from Spain, chests of tea and spices from the Orient. He would sit of a summer evening in an old canvas chair on the porch of his house in the little settlement of Rockport that he helped found. He would take me up in his lap and he would say, "You know, Netta, the other side of those hills is the sea, all the seas I've sailed on." Then he would sing sailor songs for me, first in Norwegian, then in broken English, which he never really mastered.
Oh, wow.
And interspersed would be phrases of Italian or German, Greek or Spanish, and even sing-song Chinese, for he'd picked up a smattering of languages, and I would somehow feel the magic of the white sail and the seas.
Wow.
Sometimes he would pinch my cheeks and say, "Wait till you sail with Grandpa into the fjords of Norway and the harbor of Fredrikstad." And then she said, "We never sailed to Norway, for he died when I was only 5. Yet all my life I've longed to see the fjords and the harbor of Fredrikstad." And so, what an amazing experience. I felt like I had been led to this little pearl that just so beautifully captured him and who he
Oh,
was.
and she was a
And
beautiful writer.
she obviously took after her father, who was an artist and a poet and a gifted writer. So she obviously picked that up from him. I love the fact that you caught that, because I completely agree with you.
I mean, just
So
her description of him, the deep set blue eyes, the stockiness. So when
yeah.
she says she sat on his knee in Rockport, are we talking Rockport, Massachusetts?
Now
Or,
this is Rockport, Utah, that is now covered by the Rockport Reservoir or the Rockport State Park.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
So I was like, where is this? Okay, so we're talking, so he lived in Utah at the time. But
right.
where did he sail from?
He sailed from Norway.
Oh, okay.
He,
And that,
so so he joined the church in Norway, and with his family came to the United States and came west, and was one of the original settlers of Rockport. So, this was a needle in a haystack type of experience for me.
oh yeah,
And
but you learned so much about him from that one little story.
I did. And I decided right then, I'm going to to see the fjords of Norway, and I'm going to see the harbor of Fredrikstad. So fast forward 3 years later, my oldest daughter and her husband and their daughter went to London for 6 months for an international work experience. And my wife and I made plans to go and spend a couple of weeks with them while they were there, and decided to make the quick hop over to Norway from London. And so we were there in July, and we took a boat tour down the fjords of Norway. It
This
was
was about five
everything.
years ago then. About 5 years ago?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, it was incredible. If you've never seen the fjords of Norway, I highly recommend it. It was stunning. Um, so we spent a night or two up in northern Norway, and then took a train ride down to Oslo, because the next morning we had decided we were going to take a train and go to Fredrikstad. which is where my third great grandfather lived and joined the church. I knew a few things about him that I could pin to a specific location in Frederickstadt. For example, I knew he was christened at the old Glenman church that has stood for 600 years. So that was our first stop. Got to see the beautiful little Lutheran church where he was christened. Um, we then got in a taxi and we went to Old
Did they
Town.
still have records there though in that old church? Did they still have records of
They
that, or
didn't
they
have any that I could see, but I had already seen his christening record, and
online?
yeah,
On
I
County
found it
Church?
online. I have friends. In fact, I'm an adoption attorney. That's part of my practice, and I had Norwegian clients that were able to translate these documents for me. But
Oh wow, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. But back to Frederickstadt. So we see the old church and we get in a taxi and we go to Old Town Frederickstadt, which is it's amazing. It's almost like stepping back in time about 200 years. It's an old fortress town. They have these beautiful colored buildings that still exist. They have cobblestone roads.
Wow.
And the only thing I knew other than the church is that he was enamored with the harbor of Frederickstadt. So I had to get down to the water to see it. So we walked through the streets. It was July, but it was a cold, misty morning. We got a hot chocolate and pastry, in this great little bakery. I went into a museum. We saw the fortress. We walked down to the water's edge and looked over the harbor. And it was just one of those experiences. I was so glad to be able to walk where I think my third great grandfather walked.
Did you feel
And
this ah moment where you're like, he stood here and this is what he saw, this is what he loved?
I did. That's exactly what I thought.
Beautiful.
So we had about 45 minutes until our train back to Oslo would arrive. And my wife and I were walking back through the middle of Old Town, the town center, and we passed this little group of people, and as we passed, I thought I heard in a Norwegian accent the word gospel. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks for a minute, and then I heard the word missionary. And by now my wife's ahead of me. She never is. I'm always trying to get her to catch up with me, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I kind of pulled her back in and whispered, I don't know if this is like a church group or a tour, but I need to figure out what's going on. So my wife starts listening and she says to me, I think they're American. And I said, well, some of them may be, but the person I heard definitely had a Norwegian accent. And by now, we're kind of a little too obvious. And they stop and turn to us. And by the way, it's a group of seven people plus one, the person that was doing the talking.
So you thought it was a tour of some kind.
Exactly. So my wife says to um, a lady in the group, "Are you American?" And she said, "Yeah, yeah, we are." And my wife just blurts out, "Are you members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?"
Just
And
randomly?
the lady just looks at her and says, "We are. Why would you ask?" And she said, "My husband thought he overheard a discussion, and now the Norwegian man introduces himself and he says, 'Who are you?' And kind of, 'What are you doing here?' Not in a mean way." So I introduced ourselves and I said, "We're here because this is where my third great grandfather was born and lived." And he said, "What was his name?" So I said his name was Hans Hartwig Wilhelmsen. And he said, "Do you know what he did for a living?" And I said, "Yeah, he was a sailor." And he said, "What do you know about him?" And I said, "Well, other than what I've told you, I can tell you where he was born, when he was born, when he joined the church, and when he immigrated to the United States." And he said, "Would you like to see where he lived, where he heard the gospel for the first time, and where he was baptized?"
What?
And I thought he was kidding at first. And I said, how would you know that? And he said, "Well, I'll show you." So we get into a 9-passenger van, which that morning this group had decided, even though they reserved an 8-passenger van, they wanted a bigger one so that they could fit everyone in, plus him. Well, there was an extra seat now. So my wife sat on my lap, and we drove just 5 minutes back down to the harbor of Frederickstadt, and we're standing right next to the water. Udvar, uh, Udvar Forsberg, the man who was giving this tour, says, "So the spot where you're standing, up until just a few years ago, had an old building that stood for more than 200 years." And he said, "It's well documented that every missionary discussion took place in this home." And he said, "I have no doubt that this is where your third great grandfather was taught the gospel of Jesus Christ for the first time." So we stopped and we got a picture there with Udvar. And
Now,
then
was Igor a member of the church?
he is.
Oh,
He
he
is.
is. Okay. This is how
Yeah.
he knew all this, because he knows all the church history of the area.
Yeah. By the way, let me just digress for just a minute. This family, while we're in the van on the short drive down to the harbor, said, "This was such a strange thing for us. We were in Oslo yesterday, and we went to church, and a guy named Edward, Norwegian, approached us after church and said, 'Who are you, and what are you doing here?' And they said, 'We're the Crawfords. We're from Houston, and we have family that joined the church in Frederickstad.' And he said, 'Here is my father's number. His name is Udvar. There is no one in this country that knows more about the history of the church than my father. I think if he's doesn't have another commitment, he would love to meet you and talk to you, about Frederickstad.'" So they made the arrangements, and there they were.
And you just happened to be on the street and happened to join their party.
How about that?
Coincidence? I think not.
Yeah, it's beyond a coincidence.
It is.
So we're down at the harbor, and he said, "If you were going to be baptized in this harbor, where would you do it?" And my wife said, "Well, probably right here." And he said, "I thought you might say that," but he said, "Take a look at this." And I think he tossed some grass or a leaf into the water, and it just was immediately swept away. The current is so strong. And he pointed us across the bay, across the harbor, to a little space that had 3 boats parked in it. And he pointed to it and he said, "That is the only place in this entire harbor where the water is still enough that you can be baptized." He said, "So that is where your third great grandfather was baptized." And then he said to me, "Would you like to see where he lived?" And at this point, I'm going along with them, but I said, "What makes you think he would live here?" And he said, "Oh, that's easy." He said, "If you were a fisherman or a sailor, you lived in Vaterland or Waterland. And there were just a few streets with these old houses that have been there for hundreds of years." And he said, "I can't tell you which one your third great grandfather lived in, but this is the area where he lived." And you can understand why, because this is where all the sailing vessels that he would have come in and out on, this is
Mm-hmm.
where they docked. And so this is This is where he lived, and he lived with his family. So, you know, I
Wow.
just thought to myself, and I even said to Udvar, I said, what what are the chances of me running into you? And he said to me, there are no coincidences in life. Um, I said, well, do you do these tours regularly? And he said, no. He said, I think I've done it 6 times, but you're in good company. I've met and done this tour with President Monson and President Nelson, who both have Norwegian ancestry. And
Oh,
he said,
wow. Now, for
you
people who don't know who those people are, can you tell people who is President Nelson and who is President Monson?
Thomas S. Monson and Russell M. Nelson are both presidents of the Church of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We consider them prophets, seers, and revelators, and holding all the priesthood keys for the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. So
So, if anybody's going to give these two special men a tour, it's going to be this guy. He knows his stuff.
it was this guy.
Udvar, he knows his
It,
stuff.
it was Udvar. So, you know, um, I gave him a hug. It struck me that he was about the same age as Netta was when Hans told her these stories about the fjords of Norway and the harbor of Fredrikstad. And I just felt blessed to be able to see what he was telling his granddaughter about. And if you think about what it took to be able to be at the right place at the right time, to be able to just overhear, and I don't hear super well. I still can't believe I heard him and I picked up these English words. He spoke very good English, but still, he was speaking to another group of people, not to me. But I am convinced that we have relatives on the other side of the veil who know us, who I think he knew. I was trying to figure out who he was and gather information about him and be able to share it with others. And he was like, okay, um, first I'm going to take you to this story that was left by my granddaughter. And if you make it over here, I'm going to find a way to get someone to cross your path to tell you a little bit more about me. And he did. And that's my story. That's his story. It's not just mine. It's our family story. It's the story of Hans.
Todd, that's beautiful. And I truly, I believe as well that the veil between earth and heaven is thin, and that if we show any kind of interest in our ancestors, they want us to feel connected to them. They are connected to us.
You
I
bet
believe
there.
that they are our guardian angels. They are our people. And you wanted to learn who your third great grandfather was, and he wanted, I mean, you knew him before you came to this earth. But now on Earth's side, you have a really strong connection to him. And the fact that you could find that man just crossed his path, and he's talking to other members of the church, and they're there for the same reasons. And like, that's really beautiful. And so how old was your third great grandfather when he came to the United States?
He was in his 40s.
Okay, so he had had many years of sailing, thus the stories that he could share with his granddaughter.
That's why he had white hair and a walnut skin. I'm sure he spent a lot of time outdoors in Utah, raising a garden. But I think he probably got that tanned leather skin
On the
on a
boat.
ship.
Yep, I would 100% agree. Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, it's just we are connected to our ancestors, and it just like you said, it gave you a firm testimony that your mom is isn't just gone.
I
That
know that.
yeah, that we know that there's life after death, and that we are connected to them, even though we can't see them. We
You
can feel
said something about our guardian angels. I agree with you. It only makes sense that the people love us and who are our ancestors, who, and not just by blood, they're covenant keepers. They are like-minded. They believe in the things that we do, and you get into that same wavelength with them, and they're going to intervene in our life from time to time, perhaps protect us and lead us down paths that we should go down.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I know that to be true. Todd, the very last question I have for you is, why do you think it's important to recognize the hand of God in your life?
Was it Einstein who said that coincidences are just God's way of explaining, or God's way of remaining anonymous?
Yes, I've heard that.
Or is it miracles? Or I've fouled up the quote, but um, if we watch, if we knock, if we listen, there are answers out there for us. We don't have to go through life on our own. We not only have a loving Heavenly Father and His Son who made an eternal sacrifice for us. We have a Holy Spirit that can guide us. We also have ancestors on the other side who are interested in our well-being. I don't know how it works. I don't know how you get permission to, a hall pass to go intervene in someone's life,
Yeah.
but he did, and I'm awfully grateful for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Todd, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with me today. I truly appreciate it. And I love your story, and I'm grateful that you came and shared that today.
Thanks for allowing me to. It's a pleasure and a real honor. And thanks for what you're doing. This is important, and I love it. And I think you've filled a gap that's out there. So I look forward to hearing lots of other stories.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. It's in the beginning, it was terrifying, I have to say, because I don't know anything about technology. The only thing I knew about podcasts was how to listen to one. That was it. But it truly has been a life changing experience. Like, this truly has been a God led thing, because it's not something I ever wanted to do or dreamed about or anything like that. It was just, yeah, it's just been a really cool experience. So thank you for your kind words.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you have an experience where you have seen the hand of God or your higher power in your life, I want to hear about it. Please send an email to Sheila@beyondcoincidence.com. Have a great day.